2, 1.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go. It's streaming.
Okay. Welcome. The rest of the people will join us or will watch this later, which is a good thing that we record this now. So welcome today. We are starting the conversations on family trauma generally. I've been avoiding this topic for so long and it keeps coming back. And so this is our first topic to broach the subject. And it's on healing our inner child and healing. Okay, Kafresh, you will tell me the correct word for the mother wound. First of all, Saya will start us off with the history spiel, which he does, and then we will continue from there. So Saya, go ahead.
Okay, hi everyone, and thanks for I'm there today. I'll have to hide behind an avatar. I am functionally blind for the moment. I hope to be better soon. The year is 59 AD. The month is 27th of May, 27th of March, 59 AD. The location is somewhere not too far from Rome, actually the other side of the river. The person on her knees is called Agrippina, and she's been surrounded by individuals with a direct order from the king to kill her. A few minutes ago, as she was crossing the river, the same huge river, a booby trap had opened up in the boat, and an attempt to sink it and sink her life was, however, unsuccessful. The information reached the king, and in horror, the king sent assassins with swords. Agrippina is about to be killed. But what's interesting is the person who's given the order and who was also behind the assassination attempt is not just the king, it's her son, Emperor Nero. This is perhaps one of dramatic endings to a mother-son relationship. But if you just walk back to it, you will see so many times of trauma and so many clues. Agrippina was a concubine, or if you'd like saying it, she was a fourth wife of the Emperor Claudius. That's an emperor who was there before. And it is rumored that as a mixture of conniving and even just downright poisoning, Agrippina was not just responsible for getting her son Nero to become king, she was also responsible in the mysterious death of Claudius, the emperor before. Needless to say, being fourth wife, Nero was probably not the right person or the legitimate person to become the next king, but Agrippina had done her thing. And there's an English adage that says, how you get them is how you keep them. Because of the mysterious way that Agrippina had maneuvered her son into power, she did some of the most bizarre things. In fact, in a documentary about the 10 most wicked women in history, Agrippina features as one of them. Not only was she controlling and maneuvering, but history has it that she had an affair with her own son in a bid to maintain both power and control over her. Their affair was done in public and in the temple. I mean, in the palace. It was an open secret. Nero, growing now and wanting to be his own and not wanting to be controlled anymore, soon figured out that the only way to free himself of the annoyance of Agrippina was he'd have to kill his own mother. He's the one who therefore orchestrated the attempt to sink her on a boat. And when it didn't happen, knowing what his mother was capable of in horror, he immediately was the one who dispatched assassins. Needless to say, after Agrippina's death, Nero is not seen in bright colors. His reign was perhaps one of the most cruel in the entire Roman emperor's history. He's remembered for ordering the burning down of Rome so that he would blame the Christians for it. Right there in the middle of the flames are people who kept throwing in more flames and saying we are under orders from the emperor. I'm not one to give graphic details, but not only did innocent civilian blood flow, but also Christian martyrs multiplied at this particular time. History is witness of what really happens when an individual suffers a mother wound, a mother who had been blinded by her craving for power, and perhaps her whole set of insecurities set in motions a series of behaviors and actions which reverberated way beyond her immediate nuclear circle. In fact, a whole empire was affected by her decisions. This is not just unique to the whole Agrippina and Nero situation. We don't have time to explore examples rife in the Bible of individuals who, because of the misfits they had with their mothers, ended up limping through life with their wounds. And as it said, wounded people wound others, hurt people hurt others. They kept on trying to pacify their mother wounds down the road of life with many other things. Maybe African tradition understood something of this. They didn't have the nomenclature we do. And it is perhaps this reason why in Africa it was always said that it takes a village to raise up a child. Never was a mother left to go through labor, delivery, and upraising of a child by themselves. They were immediately surrounded by other experienced mothers who would help them navigate the toils of labor and especially the latter stages of gestation. There would be always a whole community to support them through the initial months of sleeplessness and breastfeeding. And later on, children were really not raised up in the nuclear setting, but raised up in cohorts where they could be able to benefit from the input of other mothers and other fathers. There's probably something wise to that we have lost down the road, this whole idea of taking a village to raise a child. Maybe, and maybe that is why in the African setting, we had a lot of play. They probably understood something wise in what Jesus would immortalize later on when he said, unless you receive the kingdom of God as a little child, you will never be able to enter. There's something childlike in each one of us that needs to be sustained. And I'm using the word childlike and not necessarily childish. In Africa, we maintained our childlikeness by a whole elaborate system of play, whether it was sports or our wrestling or our dance or our play or our singing. There were deliberate, isolated times when individuals cast off the cares of the day and were able to mingle across age groups and across genders and be able to just let loose that inner child would be able to come through. So whether it is surrounding mothers with a whole host of mothers so that mothering is not overwhelming, or embedding within the community opportunities for us to play and reconnect, there were ample opportunities for people to be safeguarded from the mother wound and for people to reconnect with their children. But maybe I'm just being too African-centric. Maybe these are things that we need to reimagine again as we delve today, because we never know. The failure produced by a mother wound and the failure to reconnect to your child did give us Nero and Agrippina. And who knows what else, which other time ticking bomb it is waiting to give to us. And I'm glad to learn today from the experts about how to awaken that inner child and how again to go back and heal the mother wounds, because when I'm healed, nobody knows what they're just about to unleash. Back to you, studio.
Tufunge class.
Tufunge class. That was a whole history lesson, and yeah.
How awesome.
Thank you, Saya. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
How awesome.
You see, this is why I don't do the history lessons. Sasa mimi would I have connected Emperor Nero and Agrippina to mother wound? No.
In fact, I need to go and read, because I'm like, what history did I learn?
I'm like, I don't even know those people.
Yeah. Okay. So chicken and egg, who wants to start, the mother or the person who's healing the child? So because there are two panelists, so it's very easy. Kafresh, because you've not been on this stage, mgeni siku ya kwanza, right? So we will start with you. You can introduce yourself to us and then just tell us what exactly is a mother wound.
Okay, mgeni siku ya kwanza anapatiwa, the go time.
Yeah.
So thank you, Posa. It's so nice to be here. And for everybody who's here, thank you to all of you who are logging in, logging on, and hopefully we'll shed some light. My name is, I am commonly known as Kafresh. That's what I think of myself as, and that's how I think even the creator thinks me of. As my government name is Carol. That's what the governments know me as, but you can call me Kafresh. And I am a life coach on healing the mother wound. And this is especially a topic that is close to my heart because it's my own personal journey. And when people hear the mother wound, they're like, me, I'm not wounded. I think for most of us, and especially for most of us in the African context, in the Black context, I also think anybody, any race who are raised by mothers who have come from the generation before us, a lot of us go through our lives with the programming that we picked up from our mothers. Most children, all children, the first person who you're in contact with is your primary caregiver. It could have been your birth mother. If unfortunately your birth mother was not able to take care of you because of death or she passed you on to somebody else, you had a female caregiver. And so in the instance of Kenya, where a lot of, I see a lot of people are Kenyan or even African Americans, a lot of us are coming from a history where of colonialism, where of slavery. Our parents became parents with unresolved trauma and with unresolved hurt and pain from their own childhood, from their own lives. And they had us. In fact, most of us were raised by children ourselves. If you think about, most of us were raised by mothers who are 18, 19, 20. Those were children, having children. And because a child is really programmed by the person who is a primary caregiver in the first years of life, the mother wound, as I have come to understand, is a messaging and the programming that you either received, but for most of us did not receive. For a lot of people received a lot of mixed messages about what it is to be a woman, your worth, who you are in this world. And this, the first time I spoke about this, people, a lot of women reached out to me and said, I have had this, but I didn't know what it was. So, I read about the wound, about something that I've written is, the wound lives in the heart of everyone. And this is not just for girls, it's for girls and boys. It lives in the heart as a profound sadness, an insecurity of never having been protected, nurtured, or guided, an insecurity of abandonment, a fear of being unworthy of the life received. And this wound, as a result, follows you into adulthood, into every aspect of your life, your wealth, your relationship, your expression. In fact, most of you, if you now look at yourselves, the expressions that most of us make, how we speak, how we react, is almost a mirror reflection of our mothers, your relationships, and then for our own capacity to mother, because we were born with a very strong bond to our mothers to help us navigate through this life. And so if most of our mothers did not have the tools, resources, skills, like we now have, therapy and all those resources that we have, of course they pass on their unresolved trauma and pain and wounds to their children. And again, the mother wound is also a patriarchal tool to keep women subjugated. The mother wound has generationally been used as a tool to keep women down. And so the women keep passing it to their daughters and the daughters to, the next generation. But for, one of the things that, when we speak about this with Joanne, is that when you look at this wound, it is one, seeing two things can coexist at the same time and can be true. One, you have a lot of compassion. When I think about my own story, I have a lot of compassion for my the mothers who raised me. I was raised by two women. They did not have the tools and the skills to resolve their own trauma. When I have looked back at my family history, there's a lot of trauma there and they passed it on to me. And I have a lot of compassion for that. Now, I've gone through therapy, I've gone through coaching, I have books. I just have so much. In fact, it's too much. They did not have that. And I have a lot of compassion to them. The other thing is that as a result, I was also wounded. I was abandoned. I was not nurtured. I was not protected. I was not guided. I was wounded and hurt, but it is my own reality that I now need to make a choice to heal myself so that I don't pass on this wound, to my own children. So, one of the things that has been real for most people is that your history informs how your life turns out. But your history is just that. It happened to you. You do not have to continue with what history happened. You can change your history. You can recreate a new future, and you can recreate a new story for your bloodline. So in many ways, a lot of people, there's a saying we talk about in Kenya: we were beaten, we were abused, but we turned out fine. It's a coping mechanism, right? A lot of us go through life coping. We did not turn out fine. And I think because this is such a taboo topic, how can you say your mother hurt you? In many ways, we've been taught our mothers are next to God. So we often go through life feeling very conflicted, that you love your mother, or your mother was supposed to be loving, or mothers should be loving. But you were hurt. But how do you talk about that? Then add on to culture, which tells you your mother is next to God. Add religion onto that, which tells you do not say anything, because of course you are not going to go to heaven. And people have not learned, we have not learned as a people to heal and resolve this trauma. But you can acknowledge and have a lot of compassion, but it is your choice now to heal the mother wound, because if you do not heal it, as Saya says, Agrippina, wounded people will automatically wound others. But Joanne and I, as are evidence of wounded people can be cycle breakers and can be healers. And you do not have to propagate the hurt. And I've had a lot of people in my life as a result of my own wounding, for which I'm very compassionate and apologetic, because I was rolling in my own wounding and in my own pain. But now that I know better, I do not have to pass on this wound to my children, to the people who come into my orbit. They do not have to experience me as a wounded person. So in a nutshell, that's the introduction, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions, and then Joanne will pick up from the mother and how this affects her inner child.
Okay, and just to clarify, this is from mother to daughter or mother to any child?
Mother to any child. The mother wound is experienced by girls and boys. It is more manifested in women because for a time when a boy then moves into puberty, the boy attaches more to the father. And so you find a lot of boys and males currently identify as having the father wound, and we can see a lot of it in our society. But below the father wound is a real mother wound. But for a lot of men, they first need to address the father wound. But every child has close ties with a person who is the primary caregiver, which is a mother. And you find a lot of men attached to women who exactly remind them of the wounding. If you have not healed, you'll trauma bond with a woman who is exactly like your mother, and who used to drive you crazy, but that's the only way that you know how to bond with somebody. So the mother wound is for both men and girls, but it is really more evident, and it passes on from women to their daughters, from their daughters to to their next generation. But all children do suffer from the mother wound, but it exhibits much more in our adulthood. The women really exhibit the mother wound, and the men exhibit the father wound much more prominently.
And because we are in a Kenyan setting, and this do house helps and aunties also inflict the same, and female neighbors also inflict the same wound?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Okay. It doesn't have
so for instance, it doesn't have to be your mother. So for instance, I went to boarding school at a very young age. I went to boarding school in a Catholic school with nuns. What do nuns know about young children? So not only was I abandoned by my birth mother, I was then sent to a place where nobody knew about a child. And the mother wound there, the nun is telling you to stand up straight, to be chaste, to be pure, to be this, to cross your leg, to wear long dresses, to deny everything that you're feeling about your growing body, because that is the work of the devil. You're supposed to think pure thoughts. And then you're also being taught by women who themselves female teachers who themselves have unresolved trauma, have unresolved wounds, they pass this on to you. And then you're left with a nanny. A lot of nannies who raise us, who are raising a lot of our children, a lot of people find the cheapest, the most illiterate, who has no idea about child development, more wounding there. And it keeps on going. So this is, a lot of people are raised by grandmothers, by their aunties. So this can be passed on by any female caregiver who came into the contact with you as a child, because these messages become the programming and the voice that you hear in your head.
Okay, thank you. Joanne, let's move to the egg.
Am I the chicken?
You're the chicken, and being my tribe, I have to represent, right? So chicken and egg. So just tell us about the inner child and how the mother has wounded this inner child, and of course, introduce yourself to us again.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joanne Wangi. I am a life coach, a master life coach, and I coach specifically on healing the inner child. And like Kafreshi, I came into this work because of my own story, my own trauma, my own experiences. And the bottom line is for us to stop bleeding on people who did not cut us, right? And for our children and the next generation to not experience the things we did not, the things we experienced, and to experience the things we did not experience. Because obviously, like Kafreshi said, our mothers, our fathers, and those immediate caretakers did not have the tools or the knowledge. I do want to piggyback on Saya's introduction in terms of history, especially from an African perspective or indigenous tribes perspective, because those people still exist. The family unit, the mother is in indigenous settings and in pre-colonial, pre-slavery environments, the mother was very well supported. She did not raise a child by herself. Children were not being beaten or spanked, or children were loved on, they were nurtured. There was emotional intelligence, there was wisdom in the raising of a child, but that went away for most with colonialism, with capitalism, with religion, and all those things that came and disrupted those family units and family settings that were pre-colonial, pre-slavery. The inner child, what's the inner child? The inner child is the child you were before you became an adult. So every adult walking on this earth has the child they were within them. And I'll break it down in a way that will make sense. So our child self, we have three parts to us: our child self, our adolescent self, and our adult self. Our child self is the container for all our emotions. It's the container for creativity. It's a container for all the things wonderful that you see in the world. And that part of us is the most suppressed part of us. And that is when we are healing the inner child, we are trying to bring back that part of us. Because at some point, maybe as a girl, when you are playing in the neighborhood and now your boobs are growing, you've started your menstrual periods, you're told you're no longer a child, you're a woman, you stop playing. Boys are told, now you're the man of the house, stop playing. So you suppress because everything and everyone around you is telling you you're an adult when you're not an adult yet, right? So, and in family units, especially where there's multiple children, where parents had children and did not have the support system, so the older children became automatic parents of the younger children. Those older children were not given an opportunity to experience their childhood the way a child should experience childhood. So they become parents of their younger siblings. They become more responsible. They become responsible for themselves when somebody else should be responsible for them. So that part of us is the part that we try to bring back and explore. What were you like? What things did you like? How would those things translate to your life now as an adult? A lot of times you see children doing things so carefree. We want to bring back that part of us, because that part of us is an important part of us. It's the part of us that allows us to be creative in the workplace, be creative in business, be able to interact with people in a holistic manner. You know, like you're not pessimistic and neurotic about other people's experiences. So then we have the adolescent self. The adolescent self is where we have now gotten the template from our caretakers of who we are supposed to be, how we are supposed to be. And this is where we start self-rejecting completely, like we solidify the self-abandonment. And we start adjusting to, if you're in school, school says you should be this way. If you're in church, church says you should be this way. If you're in a family setting, you're the representative of the Mwangi family, so you cannot behave a certain way because you're embarrassing the Mwangi family. If you go to the Presbyterian church or the Catholic church, or if you're Muslim, you go to the mosque, or if you're Hindu, you go to the temple, you're a representative of that community, and therefore you cannot be your true self. And therefore, you start operating from a place of self-rejection, self-abandonment, and you truly do not know who you are. Now, that adolescent self also is where our ego resides. Our ego is very important, but it can also be very dangerous. That's the part of us that protects us from the ills of the world. So that's where we have our instinct when something is not right, that comes to protect us. However, we have been conditioned to also operate from stories and assumptions. That part of us is very creative in telling stories that are not true about things, about people, about ourselves, right? We create personas whereby if I'm in church, I'm going to be the good girl, I'm going to be the pure girl, I'm going to be whatever the church needs me to be. If I'm with my friends, I'm going to be the rebel, I'm going to take this persona that makes me accepted and loved in whatever environment I walk into. And that's why even as adults, we have a persona for every environment we go to. Your person who goes to work is not the same person who is at home, is not the same person who hangs out with her girlfriends, is not the same person who will go to her grandmother. You switch, you have a switch that you flip in every environment that you show up. And then what that does to us is we also don't accept people when they come as their true authentic selves. So like somebody like Kafreshi is bubbly and whatever. If I've been conditioned to be like straight-faced, joy is not a thing we experience, like you don't laugh of your ovio because only prostitutes on Koinange Street laugh like that. Somebody like Kafresh will be a trigger, right? You'll be like, no, we don't laugh here like that. Tone down. So we want to make other people change themselves to be like us, because however they show up triggers something in us, triggers the very thing that we have abandoned in ourselves or we have been conditioned not to be. And that is the other reason where parents fight with teenagers all the time, because a teenager is trying to figure out who they are, but our controlling self comes and wants them to be a certain way because we have been conditioned that they, our children, are our representatives, and whatever they do out there is a reflection on us as human beings. It's not a reflection on them as a human being. Forgetting that every human being who is born on earth is an individual, has their own uniqueness, is never going to be like anybody else. We can try to be like everybody else, but everybody else is taken. So you cannot become somebody else. You have to go back and be the person God created you to be. And then we have our adult self, which is basically the referee of the child self and the adolescent self. And the adult self, if you're living in your adult self, you're basically living from a perspective of being present, from a perspective of being emotionally intelligent, because that child self is going to feel all the feelings, which are valid, right? However, they sometimes don't know how to regulate themselves. So your adult self is the person, is a part of you that knows how to self-regulate, that knows how to live in truth and fact, that does not create stories about things, people, places, that is able to look and just look at every present situation and pragmatically decide what is the truth about this very moment. What do I know? And what stories am I telling myself? Because your adolescent self is very active all the time, 24 hours a day, telling you stories or creating stories and narratives about what's going on around you. So you want to make sure that your adult self is able to tame that part of you that creates stories and narratives that are not true, and also able to allow your child self to come and play and be creative and be vulnerable and embrace all the emotions and be able to self-regulate. So that is what the inner child is. We all have it. It's never going away. You can suppress it, but it will show up in the most inopportune moments in life, and mostly in parenting.
Okay.
So that's it.
So Kafresh, what are these examples of how we create a mother wound? As in, how does a mother wound happen? Like Nikki Boko, is it a stab wound? What exactly is like examples, and how does it show up in life?
Okay, we don't create it; it is passed on to us. So point number one, to piggyback on what Joanne has said, a lot of us, and I can say this with confidence, a lot of us, everything you felt, experienced, saw was almost denied. So when your mother cannot acknowledge your recollection of a shared experience, for instance, a shared experience is you shouted at me. Unaniambia nilikushautia. Me, did I shout at you? So you now are thinking, but she shouted at me. Or another example, you know very well this particular uncle who is a drunk uncle at the party. When he gets drunk, this is the particular uncle who, when he comes over and hugs you, touches you, has done a couple of things, bumped into you, graced your hand, graced your boob. And because we are intelligent beings, as young as we come into this world, we are intelligent beings. We know, our spirit tells us what's not right or what's wrong, until the people who we are in the care of tell us that we are not to believe ourselves. Then your mother is telling you, hug that uncle. Why are you refusing to hug that uncle? Because again, as Joanne said, it is always about her. Your defiance, because she sees this as defiance, while you're trying to protect yourself, because it is very clear to you that this particular person has ill intentions. Now your own ability to stand up for yourself is now denied. And so you hug this uncle. Let's continue in life. You go to university and a young man does a couple of things. that in your head, alarm bells are going on because we were born, our nervous system is created to protect us. And that's why there is the flight, the freeze, the fight, the fawn, all of those responses. Your alarm system, your nervous system, the alarm bells are going on and telling you danger, danger. But your mother and your reality as a child was, your reality of danger was always ignored. And so what happens? You go with this man, he gives you a ride, everything in your nervous system is telling you this is wrong. This is not right, something is not right. But over time, receiving these messages constantly, over and over again, you dull your own nervous system and the messaging that your own body, has. And that's why we have day trips happening. You are dating somebody and he's hitting you with all the red flags. In fact, they are hitting you so many, but in your head, you're like, but those flags are like, are they like lilac? Oh no, maybe they are, they are not really red, crimson red. See, kama damu ya Yesu hivi, they are pinkish. They are not very red. So you consider, he's done this, he's done this, he's done this. The red flags are still hitting you. But as a child, you are taught, ignore everything that you're feeling, listen to what the adult is telling you. And it goes on and on into work, where you're never sure of yourself. You have received so many mixed messages that you are never sure of yourself. You never put your hand up. It's the same thing. A lot of Kenyans say, oh, you look so beautiful today. What do most people say? What do most women especially say? 5 years. You can never take a compliment because you've been told, shrink into the background. In fact, become a gray rock. Don't be the person, because humility is next to godliness and you'll go to heaven. So all these messages really impact you as a grown-up and as a woman. You don't rely on your own system, which was perfect when you came into this world, but that system also really depends on the adults in your life and is shaped and oftentimes dulled by the adults in your life. And as a result, we then don't trust ourselves. We second guess. You want to do something, but you get so close. But you are told, women who take such jobs, don't end up getting married, or, you're constantly traveling. You'll never get a husband. You'll never get children. Dull yourself, dim your light. This light that's so bright. Men are so afraid of, people with, women who are shining so bright. Nobody will ever love you. So, so the mother wound shows up in subjugation. If you are not subdued, the mother wound also shows up in the exact opposite. This Miss Independent women, which, now playing into our masculine. You're like, anything a man can do, I can do even twice better. But again, it's also really protectiveness. So that's how the mother wound really shows up. It's, your feelings are so denied. So when I spoke about the mother wound at first, most people who, even the ladies in my class right now, the one thing that is consistent is that everybody said they thought they were crazy to think that their mother hurt them, and to think that the messaging they received from their mother really has shaped them in the way that they show up today. Because again, like Agrippa, what was that woman in the Bible called? This Agrippina, yes, because the mother is, next to God, and, she can do no wrong. But our mothers are fallible, they're human, they also come in this world with unresolved trauma, especially our mothers, unresolved trauma and unresolved hurt. And they bring that to us. So many times you go around thinking, did that actually happen? That's how it actually shows up. Did that actually happen? Or did I imagine it? So you're constantly second guessing yourself because you've been told, deny everything you feel, listen to what I'm telling you, that's what's right. And as a result, we end up not learning to trust ourselves.
Okay.
Can I piggyback on what Kafreshi has said in terms of the mother wound and just wounding in general? We also all carry wounding that is generational, that is unspoken, okay? It's not just the things that were done or said. There's also the family secrets that nobody talks about, that nobody says anything about. It's that elephant in the room that everybody walks around and acts like it doesn't exist. Those things also affect us deeply. So if you're great, like I'll give an example, like for my family, my grandfather on my father's side was raised by his father from infancy by himself. Like my great grandfather raised my grandfather as a single dad. Why? Because my great grandmother had, now with the knowledge that I have, with the research that I've done, my great grandmother had all the symptoms of postpartum depression. Okay. So she became, she had psychosis after having the baby, her first child, and she was going to kill this infant because of the psychosis brought on by postpartum depression. This is a severe case of postpartum depression. So what my great grandfather did is he took this child and left their home and moved very far away. That is an unspoken topic in our family. But my father, who is now my grandfather's son, first son, had some, like there's an element in him that was troubled, that was never talked about, that nobody addressed. And he was alcoholic. And I truly believe, after doing this work, that he numbed whatever it is that was troubling him with alcohol, because there was no place for him to talk about what was going on with him. His history was never spoken about. My grandfather never spoke about where he came from. They did not even have relatives from that side of the family. They had relatives from their mother's side of the family. So these things, until you unearth them, until you dig and see who is your mother truly, right? Who are your grandparents? Where did they come from? What things happened to them and what things did not happen for them? And what are we not talking about in this family unit? So this cycle of trauma, yes, that's a good one, Posa. The cycle of trauma is passed on, even if it's not spoken about, even if it's not evident. There are things, the secrets of the prior generations are within us, unspoken, and they trouble us, even if we don't know.
Yes, and I think I'll share the Twitter thread, this where I stole this graphic from. It's and Thad does a very fantastic job of going through the what we did before the colonialist came. Things went south, as in when we were immigrating, whether following the Nile, coming from the Congo, we had means and ways to deal with trauma, and we dealt with it very well. But when the colonialists came, they literally screwed us up. So our grandparents, their stories, they never, you just hear, you are Tongangi, it's trauma that they covered. And a lot of alcohol, a lot of substance use, which we covered. If you go on the Authentic Dialogue page, we've covered substance and behavioral use disorders. A lot of it is just to cover. It's a veneer to cover the hurt we've had. And our grandparents have been hurt. They hurt our parents, and our parents have been hurting us. We did not turn out well. But the beauty about learning all this is that we can unlearn. We can unlearn and we can thrive. The best thing a parent can do to a child is to make sure the child is better than themselves.
Yeah,
And
I see a question here by Susie Q about sons. Do sons of single mothers develop father wounds, and if yes, how to avoid? So sons, all. I don't know if you were here, Susie Q, when we started, but all children basically will have the mother wound and the father wound. Some worse than others, depending on the family setting and depending on the capacity, capability, and willingness to parent a child holistically, right? There is no human being on earth who doesn't have some kind of wounding. So it's just that some are worse than others. Now, addressing sons of single mothers, yes, obviously they will experience the father wound. It's probably for them, it's going to be if the father is not present, there's going to be the abandonment wound, abandonment, rejection. There's going to be the not fitting in, not knowing how to be a man, not knowing what to be like as a man, being taught by a woman or women how to be a man. Now, does that mean all sons of single mothers become wounded in that way? No, because every child, regardless of what kind of family setting, and I like using Oprah Winfrey as an example. Yes, she talks about her wounds very openly. She talks about her trauma very openly, but she's who she is because of the spaces and the places she went as a child, and mainly school, where teachers accepted her, loved on her, and helped her thrive as a human being. So even if she was coming from a tumultuous background, there was somebody somewhere who saw her, loved her, and accepted her for who she was, and embraced her and encouraged her. So if you're a parent of you're a single parent, male or female, with no support system, if your children's teachers, or if maybe your best friend or an aunt, an uncle, there's that one person who loves on your child, who is able to encourage them, is able to be kind to them, is able to just allow them to be the human being they were born to be without trying to change them, that child has the capacity and the capability of thriving in ways that you will not imagine. And the reason I personally do this work, it's not because of those of us who have children. It's because all of us interact with somebody's child, and all of us are capable of wounding somebody's child, even if we don't have children. So the goal is for us to show up as a better human being when you interact with other people's children. Be the quote unquote adult that you wanted when you were a child. When you think about all the bad things that adults did and said to you, strive to do better than the adults that were in your life when you were a child.
And I think to also add on to Joanne, sorry, Posa, there is a notion in our culture around mother and father is perfect, right? Mother and father broken is worse. Children and human beings thrive where places are showing, where human beings and spaces where those people and adults are showing up as whole, healed, and trying to work on themselves. So, you know, there's some children who are being raised in chaotic existences, but they have a mother and a father. But they are worse off because there is so much trauma unfolding on a daily basis and drama in those homes that child may be so much better off with happy parents. So, you know, I also remind people, children do not need two unhappy parents to be together or two unhappy adults to be raising them. Children deserve and I needed whole adult human beings in my life, together, not together. And as Joanne said, I had a lot of teachers who saw me, who understood what was going on, and they pushed me along the way. So there are children from single families who are so well adjusted, they're seen. So this is definitely not to say, you know, a father and a mother. It was one of the things that I was so ashamed when I was young, because the children are curious. Na baba yako, what's your father's name? And you feel so lost. But I think now I teach my children that children come from such different homes, and we live in an existence now where there are so many permutations of different kinds of homes. But are those children being nurtured by whole adults who are showing up as their best selves and nurturing those children to be who they are? So single parent home, you know, 2-parent home, whatever, blended families, all of those, as long as you know, there is nurturing, protection, and guidance in those homes, is what every child and every adult you know, deserves to have.
Okay. And
sorry, Fosa, you wanted to say something.
No, it's okay. And the slide I've just put, Nimetoa, is about adverse childhood experiences, and they come in many forms and shapes. And those adverse childhood experiences, whether physical, emotional, or just vicarious, by watching other people getting traumatized, like your mother being beaten or abusing drugs, will affect you for the rest of your life unless you do something to it. And it will be passed on to other generations. And yeah.
I wanted to add something real quick about the wounding that children receive that is rarely spoken about. And this is children who are born into homes where a mother has terminal illness. The wounding is unintentional, right? So let's say mom had a child and then she got cancer, or she's got lupus, or she's got something, and she's unable to take care of herself. And this child starts becoming the caretaker when they are so young. That child also carries wounding that is not spoken about. So when we talk about the trauma that people carry around as adults, there's also those things that happen in homes that are not intentional, or that are not because people are dysfunctional. It is just life happening. Children who also grow in poverty, or children who grow in abundance, children from very rich home. We like talking about the children from poor families, but from an African culture, or even Kenyan culture mostly, we have this belief system that rich people are thieves. They must have stolen their money. So the child who comes from a home that is abundant in resources, in money, and there's wealth, tends to suppress a part of them because they don't want to be judged. They don't even want to be known which family they come from, because they're going to be judged. And so they suppress parts of them, and they don't want to show up as their true selves. And that is a wounding that also shows up later in life, and it is passed on to their children. So there's so many different ways that these woundings that we carry that show up. And I do want to real quick talk about gaslighting, because we do that. Not only do our parents do that to us, but we do that to each other. So for example, the child from a poor family versus the child from a family with abundance, with wealth. If a child, or even like as adults, if I say, I'm struggling, I live in the diaspora, I have a good job, whatever, right? If I go to Kenya and say, I have these struggles, my life is I'm struggling in this area, the immediate response is usually, what kind of problems can you possibly have? You have a good job. You know, we dismiss people's realities because they don't align with what we have created as a story that person's reality is. and it becomes very damaging, and it stops us from being the authentic human you're supposed to be. And that starts in the home. If, just like Afreshi said, if your mom did not acknowledge your reality, and some of us, like myself, I'm learning of the realities that I dismissed, my child's realities that I dismissed, that affected her negatively, right? Because they did not align with what I assumed her reality was, right? So when we deny another person's reality, we are suppressing or creating a wound that is invisible in that person. And it affects how that person shows up in life and in relationships, at work, everywhere.
And Joanne, while you're at it, could you also comment on complex trauma? Because the religious, the school, the everything, all that, the way all that trauma is additive.
Yeah, so when a child leaves the home, we go into community. We go, and as we are talking about this, we realize that all humans have their trauma. All humans have belief systems. All humans have that very active adolescent self that creates stories and narratives. So if Kafreshi goes from her loving home and goes into a church because she loves Jesus, or if she goes to a mosque because she believes in whatever the Muslim doctrine, or she goes to the temple and she doesn't show up the way the people there expect her to show up, she becomes chastised, right? She becomes demonized. She's told she's going to hell. She's the devil, right? And that creates trauma for a child because the authentic you is not being allowed to show up. When you go into the school system where you are supposed to be a certain way and you're supposed to be like everybody else. So the education system especially does not look at children as individuals. And yes, we have stages where medicine has dictated that a child at age XYZ should be doing this, which is okay. But there are children who will have delayed responses to certain aspects of life, right? A child may be super smart but not be able to read. A child may be super smart but not be able to memorize things really well. There's no space for that. It's, if you're not doing this, you're not smart. And for example, our education system was very traumatizing. I'm one who says I was traumatized by my education system in Kenya because when I went to school, our grades were posted outside the class for everybody to see. So if you're a child with exam anxiety, you're super smart, you know your stuff, but when you have tests, you have anxiety and you cannot pass an exam, guess what? You're number last. And then they also then bundled the children, A, B, C. So if you are in A, you are the A students, B, you are the B students, C, you are the F students, and the ones who are not smart. So what that does to the child, because a child's mind is growing and is creating a narrative about who they are, is that I'm not smart and I'm never going to make it in life. Because look at who is around me. So all those things affect who we become.
In med school, the pass list and the fail list was pasted for all. As in the day you learn you're a doctor, you learn your other classmate is going to rewind.
Also failed. Yeah.
It is
so
terrible.
Crazy. It's so terrible. And then it's also the whole number 1, 2, 3. I cannot run to save my life, so I was always the last in cross country. Then you're being made fun of, you're fat, you're this, that, and the other. So I think in addition to what Joanne has said, so there is terminal illness, there is also mental illness, right? There is families, again, is a pink elephant. We all know families where there is instances of mental illness that's running in those families, you hear, you know, the grandfather sat on the hot coals, died. The great grandfather committed suicide. There is families with histories of mental illness. And this again is a pink elephant in our home. So if a mother is suffering from mental illness, it's actually a friend of ours, Posa, you know her from, you know, where we met in the group with Joanne. Shiro Bagbauer is the one who told me after a while, she told me, do you know when you had your second child, Kafresh, you had postpartum depression. She's like, now that I know about this, and she too, she told me you were suffering from PPD, you had baby blues, but what is that? Are you even going to say you're depressed? You know, so your mother could have been, or you could be in a home where there is mental illness, a home where there is alcoholism, because people are trying to numb their pain. There is also, again, because of our culture, women who have children because you are 30 and you're being asked, and when is the baby coming? There are people who know for a fact they don't want children, but you're going to be shamed for the rest of your life. Because of my own trauma, at the beginning there, I didn't think I wanted children. Because I thought this pain, I didn't want to ever pass it to another child. So I did not want children, and I knew that very well. And I love children, but I knew I didn't want my own children until I then did my own inner healing work and decided, you know, I think a few human beings, you know, would be great. So this numbing of pain and also the fact that a woman has a uterus, that they're supposed to then have a child, you know, our culture really also exacerbates, because we shame women. You're shamed if you're trying to have a child and you cannot have the child. And actually it's your mother and your mother-in-law who's shaming you. You are also shamed if you make the deliberate decision not to have a child, you know, so you're shamed for that. So there are many factors where a lot of this wounding is actually inadvertently pressed because the mother is not just able to take care of the children. I see a question, Posa, about abandonment. So I'll answer Atara, because abandonment is my own story. I was abandoned as a child by my mother. And now knowing better, I have a lot of compassion, you know, for her, because you know, sometimes I want to put up my own children for sale. Being a single mother, you know, is hard. It was hard in the 70s to be a single mother. So you know, I have a lot of compassion, but in the same breath, I was also wounded as a result. And then, you know, and that spiraled, you know, Atara, I am an example of what the healing work can look like. And I spiraled. I was an alcoholic. I used to use alcohol to numb, you know, my pain. I used to drink vodka until I could not drink anymore. You know, if vodka cannot make you high, just know you're an alcoholic. You know, but I told Joanne, because I like smiling, I realized alcoholics lose their teeth, you know, your teeth fall off and they start cutting. I was like, I need to find another thing. Then I found food, and I was very overweight because the pain of the mother wound and the pain of childhood trauma, if you don't address it, you have to find a way to cope with it. So a lot of people cope with drinking, eating, sex addiction, moving, you know, those people who can never be alone, they're rebounding from relationship to relationship. Workaholics, you know, those people who call themselves, I'm a workaholic, I'm in the office every day. People who pride themselves to be perfectionists, that's a coping mechanism. Working out, there are people who are out there lifting weights, people who cannot be alone by themselves because you're afraid of your own thoughts. So the healing work that I have done, you know, got me around. So how do you support a child? So one of the things that that is very important for children, I have young children from when they were very small. A child needs to know and to believe you. So as mothers, sometimes we feel really bad that a child is crying. So what you do is that you hide. You hide, and then 1 minute the child was seeing you and then they were not. That makes a child so anxious. So I have had, you know, travel jobs, and I travel for a living, for work. And I know, I tell my children, I'm going for 7 sleeps, for 9 sleeps, for how many sleeps, and I'll be coming back. And of course, now we've got technology, you can keep in touch with them. So children need reaffirmation and reassurance, because the nervous system of a child, when you vacillate between being present and then suddenly you're gone, it's the same thing as a mother who is constantly, very loving, and in the same breath, tomorrow she is very cruel. A child's system and nervous system and her brain cannot cope with this. This woman is here, then she's not here. And again, children were never meant to be by themselves, but we have to work now. So assuring the child that you're coming back, and hopefully you're leaving them with somebody who will care for them, and telling them you're coming back. If you can have a routine, when I travel, my children have a calendar where they mark down, if you have a routine so that the child knows at what time, when the clock is at that hour, mommy will be coming back. So really the reassurance of the separation, because separation anxiety is normal, but you make it worse if you do the hiding act, because in our own naivete, because we are trying to save our children the pain of crying. Crying is actually really good. The child should wave at you, should escort you to the gate, and know that you're coming back. When you come back, they learn to believe you, because what you do is that when you go, you come back, the child knows adults are not to be trusted. They say one thing, they don't believe it. I can't believe it. She said she was going to come back after 2 days. She came back after 5 days, or she came back before 2 days. You do what you say you're going to do, because that's how your child's nervous system and her brain is starting to code the messages. When an adult tells me this, and you're the mother, so you are the first point of contact who registered trust, love. She's reading your body. So everything that you do, that child is coding, and that becomes a coded message, which is, if not done right, then you have to then do this work to try and decode that message and reprogram, the brain. So separation anxiety is absolutely natural, is very, very natural, but reassuring a child and coming up with a routine about, what happens in your home, so the child knows that you're always coming back.
I do want to piggyback on what
and Joan, just 1 second, because
okay.
We have 19 minutes, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, you piggyback, and then because we always end with hope. Can you give hope, as in how do you manage or bulletproof the inner child? How do you heal them? And Kafresh, the same question. Okay. So piggyback and then go down, so that, because we don't have time.
Yes. So I wanted to piggyback on what Kafresh is saying about the abandonment, because most of us have an abandonment wound because adults were not truthful to us. Mm-hmm. We were lied to. When a child loses a loved one, we lie to them that we tell them that the person went to heaven. And in a child's mind, heaven is a place you go and come back. So have truthful conversations, use real words with children, and explain at their level. Don't tell a child that daddy went wherever when dad has left and is never coming back. You're better off dealing with the grief and the anxiety on a day-to-day basis than the hope of a person coming back when they're not ever coming back. Those are those abandonment wounds that become so deeply ingrained. And then in adulthood, the person shows up as a needy human because they're always fearful of people abandoning them. Or if on the flip side, they build this wall because as a child, they were hurt so badly and they cannot allow people to be close to them because they were hurt by adults as children. So that's what I wanted to add. Now, how do we heal the inner child, and is there hope? There is hope. I use heal very loosely because this is a journey. It's not a destiny. We are not going to a destination, and once we reach that destination, everything is fantastic, all flowers. It's not, because our wounding is always going to be triggered by something. Some of our wounds are so deep and in our subconscious, we don't even know they exist until something happens and a trigger shows up, right? So we cannot heal our inner child completely.
Mhm.
And the way we can, the tools that we can use on a day-to-day basis to identify what our wounding is emotional intelligence. We have that, right? We have that in us. Understanding how we are feeling at any given time, why we are feeling it, and what we need. Once you're able to master that, you'll be able to go through your triggers and you'll be able to show up as a better human being at any given time. Because if you're hungry, you know you need food and you feed yourself, or you ask somebody to feed you, and you're able to now heal that part of you that is showing up as angry because you are hungry, right? If you're tired, take a nap. Ask somebody else to do something, because when you know what you're feeling, you then know what you need. If you don't know what you're feeling and you don't know what you need, that's when you go bleeding on people who have nothing to do with anything that's going on with you. So the basics is just knowing, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? And what do I need? And if you don't know what you need, you can also tell people, you know what? I am feeling dysregulated right now. I don't want to have this conversation right now. Can we postpone it to a different time? And also allowing people to be who they are. Stop imposing your beliefs on other people. Stop imposing who you are on your children. Your children are not you. When your children trigger you, take a moment and go self-regulate. And yes, Diana, multiple truths can coexist. That is one of the truths that really, really, really will help you heal. Because if, for example, if you have a mother wound, it is possible that your mother is the person who wounded you the most, but is also the person that you love the most. And therefore, there's a complicated relationship there. So acknowledging that you absolutely love your mother, but she's also the person who harmed you. And more importantly, she's not the person who is going to heal you. The person who harmed you cannot be the person who heals you. You are responsible for working on yourself and working on the things that are missing, finding ways to meet your own needs or ask other people to meet your needs, and creating healthy boundaries for yourself. That is the only way to live as a whole human being, and not being a person who is what we in the modern day call toxic.
And if you can just sweep through the chat and see if there's anything you can assist in. The one,
so with Beatrice,
yeah.
I'll send you also a contact of a therapist who works with abused children in Kenya. I have two. About the child who was raped by the dad. So I will send you, I'll share that contact and you can pass it on to Beatrice. Beatrice, if you could reach out to Posa. And then Jacqueline Awar, there's a story about the father. So that sounds like my story. Wanting to know who you are and where you come from is a very innate human question. Who am I? That's why children are always asking, baba yanyu anaitwa nani na mama yanyu. So this there is a reason why she did not tell you this. So this could be an area where you may not receive the truth. I have never received the whole truth. I have found out the truth for myself, because again, our parents project their own shame. So it could be a very shameful situation. But you also have to know that when you go all the way and want to uncover all this, it could be very painful. So you need to be in a very supportive environment that when you uncover the truth, that you're able to deal with whatever truth has been concealed for you over the years. This, for me, is a natural human need to want to know, who am I? Where did I come from? Yeah, so this is a big one. And how do you approach? Have you ever approached her? Have you ever asked her what have been the answers been? Maybe she could tell you the truth now. So I don't know, Joanne, whether you have something to add in that regard.
I would say if I'm a huge proponent for therapy. I do want to tell those who are listening to us that we as coaches are able to help you unearth and identify things and work through them, but some things need a professional therapist to work with, and they are able to give you tools, because also wanting to find a parent who was not there, especially if it's something that was hidden from you. There's a lot of children who are products of rape, which is why the mother is not even able to talk about it, which is why the family is not able to talk about it. And you are within your rights of wanting to know who you are, where you came from, if you have other siblings and whatever, but are you ready to deal with what comes out of that? Do you have the support system to help you navigate whatever comes out of that? If you do not have that, first find that, get help dealing with those emotions that may come from there, the emotions that you have right now, and also support post whatever you find out, because also your mom might just say, no, I'm not telling you. Then that is rejection, right?
That is rejection.
That is rejection.
It sounds like there's already a wounding, from the conversation. So so try, you need to be in a very supportive environment. And I like what Joanne has said as I do my remarks. We are coaches. We give tools. We help you see the blind spots. And because we coach from a personal perspective, so that's why the mother wound is very personal to me. For Joanne, is the inner child. I am not a medical professional. I am not a psychologist. I am not a therapist. Although here we've got one of our ladies, Mary Moranja, is a mental wellness expert.
Psychiatrist.
So she's a psychiatrist. I was looking for that word.
Yeah.
So it's very clear that there are some people who come to Joanne and I for coaching, and it's very clear that we are not the people for you. You first may need therapy. Joanne and I have gone for therapy. I've gone for therapy. When I couldn't cope, I went for years of therapy, and then coaching, and then now I'm able to coach. And I'm very clear about the person who comes in for coaching versus the person who first needs therapy before they can get coaching. So the tools and resources are available, but it's knowing where to go to first. So and if you continue following the link, POSA will provide, if you message POSA Osaya Jackson, they'll provide the details. So, I think in my closing remarks, in the hope, I like what Joanne said. We speak about inner or healing work very loosely. I will never be healed of my mother wound, but I'm aware of it. I have redefined my relationship with myself, because for a long time my relationship with myself was broken, ashamed, not worthy. I now know I am very worthy, and I have every right to be here as I was created for a purpose. I have also redefined my relationship with my parents who raised me. I was raised by two women, and I have redefined my relationship in the families that I was raised. And I always say, a mother was a daughter first. Before your mother was your mother, or any of the people who raised you were those people, they were daughters. And they too were traumatized. If you're walking this earth, if you're listening to the sound of our voices, you have some form of trauma. And so, as Diana says, two truths can coexist: having compassion, and then understanding that the choice to rewrite your history is your choice. And this work, you cannot heal your mother. A lot of us think that the apology, the fact that your mother shamed you, insulted you, abused you, othered you, you are parentified, that if she says sorry, the wound will still be the wound. It will not go away. The person who hurt you will not heal you. And so when people come to us, when you come into coaching, it is for yourself and for anybody else who comes into contact with you. But it could also be to redefine your relationship with the person who hurt you and where you received hurt. For most of us, families were places where we were supposed to receive love. For most of us, families were places where we received hurt. But when you do this work, when you go for therapy and coaching and all this work, you redefine that relationship. I have redefined my relationship with my parents, with my mother, with my auntie who raised me. It's not fuzzy and warm. It's not fuzzy, it's not warm. It doesn't look like the people who, when something happens to them, they call their mother. When anything happens, the mother is their friend. That's not my relationship, and it is fine. That is my reality. You can redefine that for yourself. So the hope is, this happened to us. It happened to all of us. Most of us, there are very few people who are raised by whole adults who are showing up in their adult self. A lot of us were raised by people who are battling their own trauma, and we have a lot of compassion. But it now behooves us, now that we know we've got all these tools and resources in our modern day, to then make the choice to not carry this baggage, because for as long as you're carrying those stones and those weights in your back, they keep weighing you down and you don't show up in your life as your true authentic self as you are created. So history happened to you, but it's not you. It just happened to you. And if Joanna and I are any measure of what could happen, is that you can use your pain to be able to shape others and to be able to guide others. So I shine my light because I know what it means to be so broken and have a lot of pain, that my own mother wound was, actually making me think that, I'm better off not being here. But I now shine my light and tell others that there's actually a way out of that cave, and your life was created for a purpose. You are created for a purpose and a bigger purpose. So that's a hope. It is possible. I know the triggers for me, and I identify them very nicely, and I move away from them, and I'm able to have very strong boundaries. But it's taken me a lot of years, decades of work to do this work. But I'm now able to show up in a wholesome, happy, joyful self. And, as Joanne says, I trigger a lot of people because I am just so joyful. But it's because I've done the work for myself, knowing that the wounding does not define who I am. The wounding is just an episode in my life. It shaped me severely. It affected me severely, yes, but it does not have to inform how I move around in this world. And then I bleed on other people, and then bleed on my own children, and pass on this wound for generations. So there is hope, and there's resources and tools and people, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, coaches. There's a lot of resources and tools.
The wound doesn't define your life. We need that t-shirt. Make it and patent it with happy colors. Joanne and Kafresh have to step out and coach their clients. I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity. And I know other people have asked, there's going to be a discussion on father wound. That's in August. So just wherever you get these flyers from, I'm not going to create a WhatsApp group, right? You get the information from there.
Please, no WhatsApp group. No, please.
I am not, yeah. So you'll get the information there. Thank you. Saya, do you have one last, yes, just unmute.
Just to also add my word of thanks, and I think three takeaways. One, all of us are wounded. That's a very refreshing thing. Two is the goal is not 100% healing. The goal is awareness, and then being equipped to deal with the wounds as you go. And thirdly, therapy is not for the wounder, it's for the wounded. I think those are very, and the end objective is that we don't bleed on people who didn't cut us. I like Pastor, we steal that one and
We have to t-shirt.
Amen, amen, amen.
we don't believe in people who cut us. That's
Who
that's
did
all
not cut
powerful.
us. Yeah.
Yes. Hurt people, although that can be stopped. You know,
hurt people can also heal people.
Yes,
I like that saying. Hurt people can also psycho break and be the people who heal others. So we can change that narrative because that is staying in a state of brokenness.
I also want to just say something real quick, because a lot of us are numbing with things. If you find yourself, your default setting is, I've had a hard week, let's go for a drink. I'm having a hard day, I'm gonna go eat a whole carrot cake. I've had a hard day, I'm gonna go watch porn. I've had a hard day, I'm gonna go to the gym and work out till I pass out. You have some healing to do. If you're
I've had a hard day, I need a man.
Yes. If you're using any external element outside of you to feel good, to create a feel good feeling in you, you are numbing and you have something to heal. Explore what it is. And if your friends call you and say, I've had a hard day, let's go for a drink, instead of going for that drink, ask them, why have you had a hard day? What does support look like for you in this moment? Let's talk about what's going on. And while that's very easy to say, it is also very hard for many people, because we have been taught vulnerability is weakness. Find people, yes,
they will ghost
find people who are willing to hold space for you, and don't become the emotional dumper. Don't call Joanne and just dump all your troubles without figuring out whether Joanne is even able to be the root that you need at that moment. Ask people for permission to hold space for you. That's all I have to say.
And learn to say no. Yes, and also learning to say no. Where are people who don't know how to say no? Let's go for a drink. No explanation, right? But also, as Joanne says, we don't like talking. We were never taught, because we were not taught to talk our feelings. Those people who are feelers, people are like, you just like talking about feelings. What's wrong with you? Because it's easier to just shut down shots, right? So learning this art, it's learning how to communicate and hold space, because a lot of people are numbing. It is very clear in our society we are in trouble because of all the incidences that are happening around us. And yes, people may ghost you because you want to talk and they don't want talking. It's a chick who just wants a dude. So, you and you're talking, you'll be ghosted. But I think you'll find your people, and having, the ability to be able to hold space for other people, and relearning the skill that we were never taught. And if you have children, learn how to also communicate and ask them about, their day, what happened, because we learn these skills from a really young age. The father walked into the house, we all kept quiet, you ate in silence, because if you said anything, you are gonna be hit. So you never wanted. So I think it's relearning. We're all relearning this art. And yeah, Joanne and I always post all this information that we are sharing and what we are learning on our pages. If you want to learn more, do follow us. Lived experience, this is all our lived experiences, but we have also taught ourselves a lot more. And we thank you for sharing your Saturday, with us. And I'm sure there'll be lots more.
Yeah, Posa and Saya, thank you for this work that you're doing, creating a space where people can come and get educated, find information that is normally not out there, have hard conversations about things that affect who we are, affect how we show up in life, affect how we interact with each other. Thank you for creating this space. We absolutely appreciate you guys. And so people, thank you for showing up today. Learn to ask each other, how are you feeling versus how are you? Because that creates an opportunity. And if somebody asks you, how are you feeling? Before you respond with fine, think about, what does fine mean? What does fine mean? Where are you feeling fine? Are you feeling fine in your heart? Are you feeling fine in your body? What are you truly feeling, right? And also, when you ask that question, if you don't want to hear the answer, please don't ask that question. Don't ask people, how are you, if you don't want to hear how they are. Because if you ask me how I am, and right now I am depressed, if you don't want to hear that I'm depressed and I'm struggling, don't ask that question.
Yeah.
Just say hi and keep it moving.
Yeah. Yeah, it's normalizing. In fact, as Kenyans, we say, hi, are you? And we keep moving. You could be asking how are you to somebody who's just lost somebody last night. So I think also really being conscious that everybody, I always think everybody around us is struggling. So I also live with a mantra of kindness, a word of kindness, a smile. I live with a mantra of joy. Everybody could use kindness and joy. So are you spreading joy and kindness in your world? A lot of people are struggling. Often people are so ashamed of this load that we carry in our culture. Where you often don't speak about that unspoken because there's family shame, cultural shame, religious shame, and I don't know, all these other shames we've created and stories we've created. A lot of people are struggling, and there is so much inauthenticity. People just posting themselves. You know, how many times do we know of people who posted a very hot picture and the next day we had that somebody jumped from some floor and committed suicide? So just spreading kindness and having real authentic relationships so that people feel seen. A lot of people are not seen. Yeah, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more of this. And this has been so great. Thanks, Posa and Saya. I'll listen to that recording. Sijui Agrippina and somebody, such an awesome historical lesson. So thank you so much for this.
Yeah, just listen to the beginning. Thank you so much for thank you the audience for giving us your Saturday. Thank you very much. Thank you, Joanne and Carol. Saya, you're my sidekick, so thank you also. We will not ignore that. I think Kenyans need to go beyond saying Sasa, because the only answers to Sasa are poor and fit.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah.
Oh, there's no negative. You just say poor. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I have to release Joanne and Carol. Then we can have Numaya 10 if you want to leave. We will have a Numaya 10 session for anyone who wants to ask or contribute something or suggest a future. I get future topics from all of you. Thank you very much.
Also, I